Hi, my thing on leadership here, the definition that I found was leadership is a process of social influence which maximizes efforts of others towards achievement of a goal. This is by Kevin Crucy, who writes for Forbes magazine. I like that definition a lot. I think the fact that he talked about social influence, leadership's about people. If there's no one to lead, you're not a leader. So you definitely have to have that and have that social influence with others, and that maximizing the efforts of others towards achievement of that goal. If you can use the people around you and lead them, you can reach a lot higher than and do greater things than you could do on your own. I think that's a great definition of what being a leader truly is. Um, the person that I interviewed on this was Dr. Brian Higginbotham. I think he's a professor, full professor at Utah State, and also associate vice president for cooperative extension at USU. And Brian and I have the opportunity to work fairly closely together on several projects, and he's someone that's always impressed me as someone who is not only a good administrator, but also a very good leader. I think he does a terrific job in how he administrates. And I think this is, I guess, really kind of sums it up. Leadership is about people, and Brian is a good leader because of how he administrates, not because he administrates. The difference there, some people think because they're administrators, they're leaders. I don't think that's truly the case. I think that a good leader is made in how they act and how they administrate and how they work with others. And Brian exemplifies that. So in the interview, we talked about several things, the same questions that Deb gave to all of us. One of those questions was, what is a leader's best asset? Brian quickly responded, it's the people that he or she serves. And again, I think that ties back to the definition of Kevin Crucy in Forbes magazine of what a leader truly is. One of the things he talked about was in conflict. Talked about how do you resolve conflict with those who you lead. And he said conflict comes from misunderstandings, and communication resolves this. If there's not misunderstandings, you're not going to have conflict. So that was kind of a big thing for him, and having that open communication, asking questions, resolving those misunderstandings, and then that in turn resolves a lot of the conflict. He also said a leader should be committed to the success of the organization and the success of those that they work with. And that was the kind of leader that he feels like he would be, and the people who are his team, his followers, would say he is. That he's someone who's committed to the success of the organization, which in his case is Extension, and the success of those who he works with, helping them be their best selves. Motivating people. When we got talking about this question, he said one of the things he does to motivate people is to ask input and to listen more than talk. Providing opportunities as well for meaningful feedback. And he really highlighted this and talked about this a little more, saying that meaningful feedback. Some leaders, they talk and they say this is what we should do, and then say, okay, any questions? That's not meaningful feedback. Or leaders will say, here's what we're going to do. They have it all mapped out and say, okay, what do you think? After they've gone to all the work of putting it together. For example, he gave the example of if he knows a project that's coming up, he'll give it to his team a week or two in advance and ask him to spend some time on it, really think on it, and provide their input of how they think this should be formulated before the project's due, not just bring it up and say, okay, what do you think at the end after he's put it all together. And that provides meaningful feedback, lets people, I guess, have ownership in what they're doing and truly feel like a team, not just people that are saying yes to whatever the boss is asking them to do. And then he said another way he motivates people is to don't ask people to do what you would not do yourself. So he tries to do that with his team. He wouldn't ever ask anybody to do something that he wouldn't feel comfortable doing himself. So he talks about what's the most difficult part of being a leader. We talked about this, and I think he gave a great answer here. He said, seeing the potential of a unit, but having bureaucratic red tape keep the unit from reaching that potential. That's something that Some of us who work for the university probably see a little more than in other organizations, but I do think that you're going to see that anywhere that you would work. Seems like that red tape is there in businesses, it's there in the private sector, maybe not to the extent that it is in government work or working for a state institution, but it's there, and it is difficult sometimes to deal with bureaucracy and the red tape and not being able to help people reach their full potential because of the red tape that is sometimes put in place. Measures of success. How does he measure success as a leader? He said doesn't just look at the quantitative measurements. Not a real numbers person. Ryan says behind every number is a person, and so you feel that you have to look at those people and look at really what's behind the numbers. And then he said with success, you feel in your gut that you're having success by steering people in the right direction. One example he gave is sometimes you have to say something that's not really fun to an employee, come down on somebody, but if that's helping them move forward and to become better, if it was done in the right way, and you have the right relationship with that person, then it's helping for success. And so he constantly just checks that in his own feelings and in his own gut to say, what I did today, it might have been frustrating, but it was something that had to be dealt with, and it will move us forward for further success down the road. And then the question on how does he encourage his followers or his team. Talked about supporting opportunities for their personal development, paying for conferences, things that they might want to go do. He said he had one person that wanted to study Spanish and who was an extension agent, and he allowed them to take an hour or two a week. He says it wasn't that big of a deal, 1 hour and 40, not going to be a huge deal, and they might talk to people who are Spanish speakers, so he thought he could justify that. But it was something that they really wanted to do, and so he allowed them to do it. So he says finding those opportunities allow those people to stay fresh, not get bogged down in the drudgery of work. And then the other thing I put here was why not? He said that a few times. As people come to him and say, could I do this? He often asks, well, why not? And if he can't have a good reason of why not, then he allows that to happen and helps people to be able to do what they would like to do. On creating change as a leader. His quote here, and I apologize, I guess I missed the quotation mark there at the end of this quote, but he says, change occurs when leaders are willing to ask questions. Questions lead to answers. Leaders with all the answers can't bring about long-term change. So he said, if you're asking questions of your people, asking what's keeping them from doing this or doing that or being successful, asking for, again, that meaningful feedback from those that you work with, and finding those answers to things, not just always having the answers, but questioning things that will help lead to answers. And that's kind of the academic in him as a professor, is that those questions lead to answers. It's good to ask questions. You need to ask questions. That helps in discovery, and to encourage his employees to also ask questions. And so I thought that was really, really good. Another thing that he does to create change is recognizing other people's good answers and supporting them in what they want to do. He talked about sometimes leaders they need to be humble and acknowledge other people when they do have good answers, and not just take those answers and feel like that they were already their ideas as the leader. And so recognizing those good answers and supporting people, letting them be part of the team and saying, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. That helps people feel validation and makes them want to continue to be better and work for the organization. And then he talked about being a steward, and he talked about a former dean that he had the opportunity of working with, and said that she made the comment, kind of talked about being a steward of her chair as a dean, and said that she was taking a turn in that chair, and that it wasn't her chair but one that she had stewardship in. And then when she left that chair, she was leaving it to somebody else. And so I think leaders that do that are going to treat things differently. They're going to look at things differently. It's not I'm in charge, I'm the boss. It's I'm here for this time, and I'm going to do the best I can with it in trying to lead my team. And so being a steward, I think, is another great thing in leadership. And the world kind of tends to, when people get power, they think that it's all their way and they can enforce it, and and that's how they create change. But that's not true change, or definitely not positive change, in Brian's opinion. So last, I asked him about if there was one thing that he could improve on as a leader, what would that be? And this was just my question that I came up with kind of at the end of the interview. And the one thing that he said was more personal touches and connections with the faculty and the county agents and specialists throughout the state of Utah who he kind of works with and has some supervisory responsibilities for. He felt like that's something that goes a long way, but something that he just frankly doesn't have enough time to do. To send a birthday card, a thank you card, a note of encouragement to those people. So those personal touches is one thing that he would like to work on in himself. And I think it's something that does go a long way, me personally, and I think it's something that we could all work on, and I think it's another great thing that good leaders tend to do. So I thought this was a great assignment. I enjoyed doing this leadership interview, and just want to thank Deb for a great semester, and for your leadership, Deb, in helping all of us throughout this semester.